Welcome, guys, once again to ABD In Conversation. Today, we're back with Jeff.
Hey, everybody.
Exciting. And we're going to continue our chat about going beyond Agile to organize for the future. But today, we wanted to tackle the changes. Turn the phase the stranger. What? No, changes. Turn and face the strange.
Turn and face the strange. Okay, I can tell that you've never listened to any David Bowie, right? It's before your time. Yeah, I should probably be careful with some of the references we put in here, right? Because I'm completely dating myself. But whatever. I guess it's not age; it's wisdom. So we talked a bit about the industrial era, right? So let's talk a bit about today. What's different, Nico?
Oh gosh,
everything's the same, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. We live in an era of global markets. We live in an era of constant connections. We live in an era where social media, like Twitter age, like all these different now robotics, AI, like many different dimensions, like pretty much transform the way that we interact and the way that we trade, have a massive impact in pretty much every dimension of our society and our lives. So it's very different than the industrial.
Nothing's the same. Nothing's the same. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's looking at this is like, yeah, I've seen this slide a million times, guys. I get it. Let's hit the next slide because I think it's good to talk about the impacts, right? So what's interesting is if I'm an organization and I'm a corporation and I'm trying to provide value, the market's no longer empty. It's like, hey, this is the first car, or hey, we have 5 types of microwaves or 3 types of refrigerators. The markets are crowded, even though they're global. There's so much competition. The global competition is there. Everybody's providing something, and not only is it crowded, they're fast.
Yeah.
So I got to get something out quickly, and I've got to get something out that is in the face of a lot of competition. So I've got to do it fast, and I've got to be unique.
Totally. And I think that like what we were teasing towards the introduction of these new technologies, to your point, now barriers to entry to market, it's so low that pretty much anybody can do this. And this is where we see all these new startups and things like this, like hitting all the big behemoths or incumbents, because they can move that fast. They can do that. You can try the market very quick.
Yeah. And if you think, remember we talked in our last discussion that we said the overarching challenge of the industrial era was generate wealth, build goods as cheaply as you can, get it out to as many people as you can. If I were to contrast that to now, what would you say then the big opportunity is for organizations or for industry these days?
Absolutely. Like standardization, I think, is a bit of a thing of the past. I think customization is a huge advantage, which requires adaptability to change and capability to have strong resiliency to change.
So it's no longer change. It's no longer follow a plan. It's adapt and evolve.
Yes, exactly. And adapt to the market. The market conditions change in a daily manner. Introduction of new technologies change the way that we do things on a daily manner. So it's how do we respond to this?
What about the customer? Like when we engage with the market, we used to be the same product to everybody and let's mass produce it. Now it's the opposite, right? It's go and get a service or product that meets the exact needs of a kind of a customer cohort, and make sure that they're super happy with it. And by the way, don't expect them to be happy with it for. So it's kind of like differentiated solutions that create loyalty to an exacting audiences, and and be able to constantly do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And what's that mean for people? Let's hit the next slide because I want to talk about what that means for us. Imagine you're the person and you're providing value. I'm going to go to do another. I know we did a history lesson before. I'm going to do another bit of a history lesson. Way back in the times of ye old, when brown and light brown was a really popular color, you had craftspeople, right? And that's most goods and services were provided. Like I need a shoe, and you'd go to the cobbler, and Pinocchio would be standing on the side, and that kind of cobbler would come and build your shoes exact to measure. And people were in ascendancy. It was all about people providing goods, and that was great. It was customized. You got exactly what you want, but man, was it expensive, and not a lot of people could afford shoes. And then the industry came along. Dun, dun, dun. I am industry. Sorry, that's my best Cybermen imitation. And, you know, we got goods and wealth to everybody, but the people were treated like were cogs. They were treated like cogs. They were cogs. And where we had machines, they were also cogs. Everything was about instruction and machinery. And we even thought of people as machinery. And now it's gone full circle. We're back to because of complexity, because of uncertainty, because of that whole VUCA thing, because of volatility and ambiguity, people are now required to understand what the right thing is to do and what is valuable to the customer. Sure, we that's why I have a picture of a digital person. We still have technology here, but technology is being used in thinking, living, intelligent people that have to make decisions. We need people to provide value. The knowledge that people have has suddenly become much more important. People will counter, well, I can just get that into my standards and I can just kind of create blueprints for things I need to do and traditional processes. And I'll say, you're not thinking about complexity. In a complex world, standards and processes, and bureaucracy doesn't scale because you create your machine, you put all this effort into of defining it, operating it, getting going, and then the market changes. And your machine is irrelevant. So this machine that you create is never keeping up with the actual change that's in the environment. And it's a zero-sum game, or worse, it's a negative-sum game. You're losing all the time because you've got this machinery that's always out of date with what you're trying to do. I don't know if anybody, I don't know if you've read Organizing for Complexity by Neil Flaglin. This I totally just ripped this off from him, but I love this slide because it just kind of shows that ascendancy of of person, then ascendancy of the machine, and then ascendancy back to the person again. And really just a reframe of what we talked about in the previous slide, but it talks about this. You talked about this before, mass customization, right? The other thing I like to talk about is we're organizing now. We need to organize for humanity at scale. Basically, we need to understand how humans can connect with each other and collaborate, but not the 3-person crafts team. It's how do I scale this up to the larger organization so that I can create value that impacts larger markets. But I mean, we have to do that in a way that we can still do things that are fit for purpose for our customers, and that's the real big challenge of our time.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, one of the things that I love about this particular graph is that, like I mentioned before, this whole concept of what are those singularities or big changes that happen. You see them right there. Introduction of the industrial age, 1850s straight to 1900s, immediately changes the global markets. 1970s, we started introducing computation, we started introducing the internet, we started introducing all these new things that are now part of our lives. Things exponentially change. And to Jeff's point, I think the big question is, we are in a time in which things are going to keep changing. And we all know that there's big changes coming. We're just going through one, like a big pandemic. Who would have seen this coming?
Right.
And it is, how do we adapt? And what are those things, those new dimensions that we need to look at so that we can actually transform the way that we even think about each other at the workplace?
I mean, I'm probably talking ahead, but I think it's probably important for people to listen. Like, everyone talks about the age of complexity, but I think we're shifting from the age of complexity to something where we're in the age of catastrophe. But the need for humans to solve problems in an age where we've got almost a world existential crisis only goes up. We don't have less reliance on people. We now have more reliance on people. And we'll talk about more of that in a couple of conversations down the road. The other thing that you got me thinking about is everybody acts like digital is new, innovation concepts are new, like all this complexity is new. It's not new. It's since the 60s and 70s, we've been in this paradigm. Since computers started automating people's tasks and we no longer had to look through file folders, we were in this new paradigm of accelerated change. You could say we're in this paradigm even in the early 1900s. It just wasn't noticeable. It wasn't as rapid. It wasn't as accelerated. We're now hitting the point where the amount of complexity and the amount of uncertainty and the acceleration of it is making it extremely comfortable for people who are working in industrial organizations. So that's what's making it so important. It's not that all of a sudden we've got all this change. We've always been accelerating. It's just now we're all working in these, I call them industrial organizations. And we're working in industrial organizations, but we're no longer in the industrial era. We're in a completely different age. And so that makes us very uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's many examples that we can bring up, but I think that this is a really good point for us to just stop and, we'll continue this conversation in our next ABD In Conversation. Thank you, Jeff, once again. This was fascinating. I'm really excited to talk about what's next.
Well, I think what we're going to do next is let's talk about the rise of the human. And what would be a good song for that? Maybe it's The Return of the Human. So that can do like some Star Wars music.
It's the era of humanity, almost like complexity and humanity. Anyway, with that, thank you, Jeff, and we'll see you in our next ABD In Conversation.
Thanks.